I will launch into it everything you needed to know that we're afraid to ask about water repellency, but more importantly where I think we should be moving with management of water repellent soils. How many people have got clients or have farms with water repellent sand? Quite a few. How many are focused on getting the crop out of the ground and after that's relatively easy? None of you. None of you are interested in getting crops out of the ground? Okay, fine, okay. Maybe I'll change my talk. Okay, water repellency, two major options. Either get rid of it, which we call amelioration, clay spreading, delving, same thing. Basically it removes water repellency. Long-term solution, similar to buying the neighbour out or investing in clay spreading. So that's an option, deals with water repellency essentially permanently. I'm not going to be talking about that much. Most of what I'll be talking about is mitigation, which essentially means I've got water repellent sands, how do I live with it without spending an awful lot of money? There's been a lot of work done on this. Those of you that know me know I rarely talk about my own stuff because it'd be a pretty short talk. I probably won't acknowledge most of the people who have been involved because these messages come from a whole range of sources, but there are some local examples. Mandy's been running water repellency trials, we've done a few, and obviously WA are doing them all the time. Okay, so we started a trial down at Wangari, 500 mil rainfall country. I'm sure I saw a brontosaurus where I was when we were selecting the site because it's in that tiger country behind Coffin Bay, and we're essentially looking at do agronomic practices, conservation farming techniques make a difference on water repellent sand. This is the site. The photo's a bit too far away to see, but typical water repellency, this is an MED of 3.5. That's the degree of water repellency with the alcohol drop test. That's about as high as you'll get in most commercial situations. Difficulty is this was a long-term pasture, grows cows but not much else. So it's not a typical cropping situation but extreme. That's the profile, and what I'm going to get back to is water repellency occurs in the top few centimetres but only deals with that top few centimetres. The big problem with this soil is all the stuff underneath it, not just the repellency. Okay, so we looked at the standard conservation practices of no-till versus minimum till, and also stubble management, either retaining it, grazing it over summer or getting rid of it with a late burn. Do they make any difference to the performance of crops on a water repellent sand? The conservation farming practices do to a degree, mostly I think because they retain these preferential channels of water flow. So where you've got crowns and intact root systems, you do get funneling of water down into those crop rows or old crop rows. They do wet up better than they do the rest of the paddock. So if you're in a minimum till system or no till with stubble retention, you maximise the existence of those preferential areas of wetting. That's where you get a benefit from conservation. Does it make much difference? No, it doesn't. So stubble retained with no till was the best of all those options. It didn't change the water repellency at all. So the levels in those conservation farming practices were just as bad as where we'd tilled and burnt and done other things. And we see that a lot of things. So yes, you can make gains by installing a conservation farming package on water repellent sand. It's not going to change the nature of the beast, but it will keep you getting the best you can out of the system. Started another one at Waminda on a cropping paddock, and two things we're looking at. This issue that everybody's interested now, if crop row placement makes a difference in terms of getting a crop out of the ground, and also a lot of local interest in wetting agents. So we looked at those two factors in terms of improving productivity. These are the two products we used. So they're commercially available wetters, and there's the extremes. So the plot on your right has been clay spread. That's what we'd like to see on water repellent sand. We've eliminated water repellency. Easy, 150 plants per square metre without doing anything drastically different. Everything else is your classic water repellent sand establishment with plant numbers down to a third of what we're achieving in the clay spreading. What did our techniques do? The wetting agents actually worked a treat. 3 years out of 3 now, jetted into the seed row, and up to double plant numbers in some circumstances. Not always that good, but they had a benefit every year. So I was surprised that they were that good. Both products the same at label rates. So that seems to be a tool that you can use to help crop establishment. Near row sowing, we've been struggling to get that, one, to get it to work at Warminda, and two, to get a benefit from it. But generally, as Rick was saying earlier, near row sowing, on row sowing will give you better plant numbers than off row sowing in water repellent country. We were using rotary hoeing to incorporate the clay, so we had a rotary hoeing only. Did a fantastic job at eliminating water repellency in year 1, was probably worse than the control in year 2. So spading, rotary hoeing, whatever, gives you a very quick fix of water repellency. It lasts no longer than a year because the water repellency will re-establish itself pretty quickly. A lot of the farmers up the Warminda area will do a double pass type operation or a cross sowing or have boots off half the tines, just some way of spreading the seed around to different places in the paddock so that at least some of it will come up somewhere sometime. That worked okay, but it was nothing magic. And we had dry and wet sowing conditions in those plots, and not surprisingly the dry sowing conditions are always worse in terms of repellency and the resulting crop establishment. This is the key, what I wanted to come to at the end, that we've been able to double plant numbers with things like wetting agents, rotary hoeing in that first year. The yields are the same as where we've had plant numbers up to a third, 2/3 less than these better treatments. And that's what I wanted to end up with. So I think, yes, water repellency is a pain in the arse if you're managing it. Nobody wants a patchy crop which delays weed emergence and causes hassles with nutrient uptake and all those sort of things. But to get better productivity, we've got to address the shit that's under that sand. Until we start doing that, we're going to be stuck with better plant establishment and still really poorly producing crops. And there's a whole raft of investments now in that space, particularly by GRDC, seeing if we can actually improve these sands through the whole profile and make it pay.